All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I can say it's afternoon because no matter where you are. Wait, is that true? No, I guess if you're in Hawaii, it may still be morning, but Hawaii and Alaska. Um, hey, thanks for joining us. This is our monthly masterclass. As always, we bring you the best, and we do it because we want to provide value. And give you things that'll help you in your business. Wow, we just went from like two people to 98 people
It's
in
going
about
crazy.
20 seconds. We'll
Yeah.
give it a few minutes. It's 1 minute, 1 minute past the hour, but you guys are going to want to, like always, have a pad, just like you can't see my pad, but you can see there's something in my hand. That's a big yellow pad that I take notes on. Have a pen because you're gonna want to listen really carefully to some of the great ideas and thoughts that are going to be shared with you during this. So I'll introduce our guest in just a moment. I'll just give you guys one more minute. Hey, while we're waiting, it's always fun to see where everyone is at. So in the chat, just put in the city that you're joining us from. The West Burbs of Chicago. Okay.
Albuquerque, San
RJ,
Diego,
San Diego. All right.
Riverview, another San Diego. Holy cow. Eugene, Oregon. Don't hear that very often. Lehigh, Utah. Now, you almost don't they? I thought to live in Lehigh, don't you have to be Mormon? And I can say that because I am. I was just curious. I thought that was a rule down there. I wasn't sure. So Lehigh's a great spot.
Oh, we do have someone in Hawaii. All right.
Do we really?
Yeah.
Where at? Where in
And
Hawaii was it?
Kailua.
Oh, Kailua. Beautiful area.
And then
Wow, there's another one from Oahu. Look at that.
all right. So so listen, we know there's a lot of you here. We appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to join this. I know you're doing it for not for us, you're doing it for you, and that's why we're doing this. So here I want to introduce our speaker. My, Michael Hellickson is someone who's been in the business for a long time, early 90s, and I think we probably met probably somewhere around that time.
Yeah.
And Michael has been at the time that he was an active agent, was one of the most prolific agents in the country, listing and selling more homes than almost anyone and probably anyone at certain times. So one of the top agents in the country, if not the top agent in the country. Since then, he's built a huge coaching and consulting business. Um, Club Wealth, which some of you may be familiar with or see online, is a really unique coaching company. And I'm a big believer in coaching. I have a coach. I've always had a coach. Well, always since 1996, which was the first year I discovered there was such a thing. And I still have one. Had my call yesterday with him. And I'm a big believer in that. One of the unique things about Club Wealth is that all the coaches are top producing teams and agents or leaders of teams and agents. And they match people, according to production levels, which I think is a really smart thing to do. Um, this is not about, Club Wealth coaching. It's not about our Movoto network and us referring you leads. This is about listening to someone who has helped thousands and thousands of agents achieve at the highest level and share some of the ideas and some of the things he's learned. So, Michael, I could keep going on and on, but I'm going to be quiet so that you can do what you do best, and that's share with the audience.
Oh, that's super nice of you, Chris. I appreciate it. And for those of you guys that don't know, Chris and I met decades ago in a mastermind a long time ago. And it's funny because I was just sharing with somebody today, Chris, about how you're the first guy. We were both of us, along with some of our friends, were the first in the country to build real estate teams. And Chris, you were the very first person. You inspired me, and I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you or not, but you inspired me. I remember going into your office and you had this shelf all along the wall. This is before stand-up desks and all that other stuff. And you had this shelf along the wall and your computers on it, and you had your mirrors on it and your scripts on it, and you had the computers were on the shelf, and everybody could stand up and make their calls. And I'm like, man, that is brilliant. It was one of those things like everybody in the industry is like, well, why didn't I think of that? Like, I mean, it's one of those BFOs, right? This blinding flash of the obvious. It's like, I mean, can't believe we haven't been doing this all this time. And then a decade later, stand-up desks came out. So,
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember my first month in the real estate, I brought in four cinder blocks into the office and put them underneath the desk, and everyone was looking at me like, "What are you doing? And why are you standing up in your cubicle?" Like,
because it matters. It makes a difference on energy. And, I think that's, a great first lesson for our call today is, guys, energy begets energy, activity begets activity, right? And so one of the most important things you can do when you're talking to people, stand up, and not only stand up, smile. That's what the mirror is for, right? Because you got to make sure that you're standing up, you're smiling when you're talking to people. We don't call it smiling and dialing for nothing, right? We call it that because if you're smiling while you're dialing, guess what's going to happen? People are going to hear that on the other end of the phone, and it's gonna endear them to you. It's gonna give you a much better chance of a positive outcome. So that being said, Chris, thanks for the introduction. I'm gonna rattle off some stuff very quickly for you guys. Grab a pen and paper. We're gonna go super fast. I got like 3.5 hours of stuff to cover in about 35, 40 minutes. And so just to give you some, behind the scenes, Chris, I appreciate that intro. Just so you guys know, my numbers were, I was closing 120 to 180 transactions a month at a time when number two and number three combined were doing about half that. And those are good friends of Chris's of mine, Jay Kinder and Mike Reese, two really great agents out there. And we were carrying about 750 active and pending listings at any given time. So that being said, I want to talk to you guys about two things today. The second thing I'm going to talk to you about is how to get 5 listings, or sorry, 5 different ways to get 3 listings in the next 30 days without spending a bunch of money on leads. In fact, you don't need to spend any money on leads. So we're going to talk 5 ways to get 3 listings in the next 30 days. Before I do that, I want to just tease you with a thought. There's this waterfall of money, and it's just raining down next to all of you guys. And most of you aren't even getting wet, even a little bit. And most of you aren't even getting damp, right? And what is this waterfall of money I'm talking about? It's investing in real estate. And I want to plant this seed because I have a hunch that most of the people on the call are probably doing less than 75 transactions a year. In fact, I'd venture to guess that a good number of you are probably doing less than 25 transactions a year. And so I would also venture to guess, and I'd like to know by commenting in the chat, if you own rental properties or not. So I want to see, how many rental properties do you currently own? Just put a number in, 1, 2, 0, 10, 100, throw a number in. I want to see what you guys own in terms of rental properties. I'm seeing some zeros, I'm seeing some ones. I appreciate the honesty and transparency. This is really helpful to me. And I'm also seeing some 3s, 5s. I saw a 6. So this is good. I got one that's got 50, 34. Look at you guys, 37. That's fantastic. Okay, so here's the deal, guys. We're not going to go deep on this today. I'm just going to suggest this. If you are doing 0 to 25 transactions a year as a real estate agent, I want you buying at least one property that you hold and rent out each year. If you're doing between 25 and 75 transactions a year, I want you to make sure that you are holding at least 2 transactions a year. I don't care if you got to sell a kidney. You got to figure out what you're going to do to get the money together. And whether you do sub 2 transactions, whether you put money down, I don't care how you get into the property. It's got a cash flow. And specifically, I want it to meet the 1% rule, which means if you buy it for $400,000, it's got to rent out for $4,000. It's got a cash flow. It's got to have at least 20 to 50% equity in it the day you buy it, whether you're putting that money down or you're getting a good deal on a property and it's coming with built-in equity. But at the end of the day, you also have to have 25% arbitrage. That's the difference between your PITI and your rent. Okay. If you just make sure you follow those numbers, and it might not be possible, it might be difficult or impossible to do that in your area, fine, then buy somewhere where you can do that, right? Whether it's the Midwest or wherever, I don't care where you buy. You need to get in the habit of buying these properties regularly because guys, this is the best business in the world. I love real estate. Honestly, it's having a real estate license is like having a license to print cash. The key though is that most people squander that cash. What we need to do is we need to hold on to some of that cash and and deploy that into these rental properties as quickly as humanly possible. So let's talk about how to get more cash. Okay. And Jennifer, if I'll tell you what I'll do, I'll just give you that formula one more time so that you guys can write it down quickly. It's, you want to meet the 1% rule, which is if I buy the property for $500,000, it's got to rent out for $5,000 a month. It's got to have 20 to 50% equity, and it's got to have 25% arbitrage. That's the difference between my principal, interest, tax, and insurance and my rent. So if my PITI is $3,000 a month, my rent's got to be at least $4,000 a month. Okay. And so that's it. Those are the hardcore cast in stone rules that I'm going to recommend you follow for your buy and hold properties. And guys, there's lots and lots of ways to succeed investing in real estate, just like there are in selling real estate. And so I'm not here to say that there's only one way to do it. What I'm saying is you need to get started, and flipping properties is great, but you got to be buying and holding properties to build real wealth. Now, let's talk about how to make money selling real estate. Okay. I'm going to give you 5 ways to get 3 listings in the next 30 days without buying any leads. It's very straightforward. Now, I will tell you that whatever your market average sales price is, you should be able to make that amount of money. I'll give you an example. If your average sales price in your area is $400,000, then you should be able to make $400,000 working 22 and a half hours a week. Here's the key. Most people work way more than that, but they're not doing the right things in the 22 and a half hours a week, right? They're doing everything but the things that make the needle move. So here's the 5 things. I'm going to list them out, and then I'm going to take a couple of them and I'm going to walk you through how to get business out of those. Okay. So here, write these down. FSBOs, expireds, cold calls, open houses, sphere of influence. FSBOs, expireds, cold calls, open houses, sphere of influence. Now, guys, I need you to hear me loud and clear on this, okay? All 5 of these work. All 5 of these, if you do them right, could easily make you whatever your market average sales price is per year in gross revenue to you. All 5 of them. Now, I'm going to say you're probably not going to ever need to do cold calls. Why? Because the reality is there's so much of the other ones that you just probably won't need to do that. And of those 5, cold calls is the least effective. It still works, and you can absolutely make your average sales price in your market in 22 and a half hours a week just doing cold calls. But that's not what I'm going to recommend you do. Instead, we're going to start with the most successful of those 5 ways, which is, can anybody guess? Type it into your chat. What do you think the easiest way? What's the fastest path to cash? If I need money right freaking now, which of those 5 things am I going to do? Oh, I love this. Look at all these ideas coming out. Look at this. I got FSBOs expired, sphere, 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 sphere. Everybody wants to say sphere. You know, I always love it when they say that, Chris, because what that tells me is everybody wants the answer to be sphere because that seems like the easiest thing to do, right? But the reality is it is not sphere. And by the way, I'm going to show you in a minute how to get your sphere producing a lot better. I can tell you most of you are underperforming on your sphere, but here's what it is, okay? End of the day, it's open houses. Open houses nationwide are on freaking fire right now. I mean, they are absolute gold mines right now. Now, I want you to type into the chat, how many people are you getting to your average open house? Just type a number. How many people are coming to your average open house? Okay, I got 5, 10, 2, 10, 10. All right, 15. Oh, we're getting a little better. 4 to 10 groups, 5 to 8, 20, 40, 4 to 5, 7. Guys, I don't have, and nobody's even close to where you should be yet. Okay, where you should be. Oh, now I'm getting somewhere. Charlene's like 26. Really, Michael? Are you really getting 300 your average? If you are, I'm going to take your class. That's fantastic. Good for you, man. And so watch this. At the end of the day, you should be getting on average 45 to 150 people out to every open house. Okay. And it's very easy to do, but it's not what you think. There's really 4 ways you're going to do this. But before I tell you the 4 ways, I want to tell you what you need to do in terms of selection of the house. Always pick a move up property. Never do an entry level property. Why? Because when I do a move up property, chances are better than 40%, they've got a house to sell. Right. And so I get 2 bites of that apple. Not only that, I'm raising my average sales price by going with move up properties. Right. So I always want to pick a move up property, always within a half mile to a mile of a major shopping area and no more than 2 turns off the main road. Okay. Very straightforward. Now, I then want to do these 4 things. Okay. I'm going to do the number 4 is I'm going to do social media posting and all the portals and all that stuff. Right. So I'm going to do online marketing to get people to my open house. That's great. That's good. But it's number 4 for a reason because it's not the most effective. It's good, but it's not the best. Okay. What are the next 2? The next 2 are very, very closely related. I'm going to door knock and I'm going to cold call through the neighborhood. Okay. I'm going to call everybody in the neighborhood. I'm going to door knock everybody in the neighborhood. I'm going to invite them to come out to take a look at my open house. I love nosy neighbors because guess what nosy neighbors have? They got houses to sell. They're just sellers and they don't realize it yet, right? I love those nosy neighbors. They're money in the bank. All right, now, number 1 way that you get more people to your open house. Can anybody guess what it is? Type it into your chat. What do you guys think? What's the number 1 way to get more people out to your open house? Quickly, quickly. Oh, you guys are taking too long. I'm just gonna have to answer it. Oh, there we go. Database marketing, food, bandit signs. George Carpenter wins the prize. We're talking signs, and I'm not talking about A boards. I'm talking about the bandit signs, snipe signs, whatever you want to call them, right? All right, so here's what I want you to write down. I want you to put up 50 signs per open house. Jeff nailed it. Jeff's heard me teach this before. 50 signs per open house. And I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, Michael, there's no way. The city will take my signs. Oh my goodness. I'm sure that hurts your feelings when the city takes your sign. Boo freaking who, right? Who cares? I mean, think about this. I had a great mentor once, Lennox Scott. He owned a big, you know, Lennox, Chris. So
Hmm.
Lennox told me once, he says, Michael, any problem I can write a check for isn't a problem. It's an expense, right? And I thought about that and I thought, man, that's really good advice. And so bandit signs are basically just like that corrugated sign with a stake on it, right? Super straightforward. And so let's say this, what does it cost you? $5 all in for the sign and the stake and even the couple of screws it's going to take to screw it in there? Big deal, right? So if the city takes all 50 of your signs, what's going to happen? You got to replace $250 worth of signs. So what? Right? In the meantime, you got 45 to 150 people coming out to your open house. Guess what? You're going to sell a couple of houses on that. Chris, you and I have a friend in common in Mike Bernier, who owns a brokerage with right around 900 agents in it. He's been one of our coaches and a client of ours for many years. And Mike, one of his agents in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in February. Come on, what do we know about February? It sucks in Minneapolis in February. Let's call it what it is. It's cold, it's bitter. And if you're from Minneapolis, give me an amen in the chat because I'm telling you, you know I'm right. And so one of his agents held this open house in February. They followed the system. They had 77 people come out to their open house in the first hour. Now, it was a townhome, so it clogged up. There was so much traffic, it clogged up the parking lot. The police got called out, right? Now, is that a big deal? No. The police came out, they shut down the open house, but who cares? They had 77 people come in the meantime. They sold 3 houses out of that one open house. Was it worth it? Yes. Write this down. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And that applies to everything in our lives, especially this type of thing. All right. Now, I'm also going to recommend, and I love it. James says, oh, but it's not allowed in many places. We can get fined. Okay. What's the fine? Right? If the fine is $10 a sign and you put 50 signs out, it's $500. Is it worth $500 to get 45 to 150 people out? It might be for you. All right. So open houses, guys, is a really, really easy one. I'm not going to go deeper on that. I just wanted to throw this out there, though. 25% of your signs, you want to have 2 helium balloons swinging from those signs. I know that sounds old school and all that, but at the end of the day, it really does work. It draws attention. The other thing I want you to consider is if you want to make whatever your average sales price is in your market every year in gross commission income, one way to do that is all you have to do is 8 open houses per month following the system I just outlined. And I guarantee you that is going to give you a gross income equal to or greater than your average sales price in your market. Okay. So that's one of the 5. So let's go into the next one. Let's talk about sphere of influence because so many of you mentioned sphere of influence. And by the way, I'm going to just touch on expireds and FSBOs. I'm watching my time. I'm just going to touch on expireds and FSBOs very, very briefly by saying I love expireds and FSBOs. They are guaranteed money if you call enough of them, and it's not hard. I have a son. His name is Austin. So Austin, when he was 19 years old, he started selling real estate, and his coach is Sharif. That's actually whose office I'm sitting in right now, Sharif, over here in New Jersey. I think Chris, you might even know Sharif. But anyway, so Sharif is one of our coaches at Club Wealth. He was coaching Austin, the first couple of years Austin was an agent, and so Austin's got this little team he gets together, and they're all going to show up at the office at 6:30 in the morning, and they're going to call expired. It's day one. This is January 1st, 2022. And this is day one for their team, right? They're all excited. And guess how many people showed up? Nobody, just Austin. He's the only one that showed up. Now, most people, now Chris and I, we make the calls anyway, because that's just how we're wired, right? Well, guess what? Austin's wired much like we are, Chris. And so Austin said, you know what? Screw it. I told my coach I would do this. I'm going to do it. And so Sharif had given him some scripts, and they're okay scripts. I mean, there's nothing, there's nothing magical about the scripts. But Austin sat there for 8 hours that day. And from 8 a.m. until whenever, I can't remember what time it was, but for 8 hours, he literally hit the phones and called every expired he could call in those 8 hours. And you know what? Chris, how many appointments do you think is reasonable for a kid that sucks at this, first time making calls? How many appointments do you think he actually scheduled?
At first, I'm going to say six.
Yeah, six would be pretty good, right? That'd be
Yeah,
good.
six would be excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually set 12 appointments that day. 12 appointments in his first day ever calling expires. And he wasn't very good at it. I'm not saying that to illustrate that he's good because he wasn't. He sucked, right? What I'm trying to illustrate here is, guys, if he can do it, you can do it. Because you don't suck as bad as he did on his first day. I promise. Kid sounded like he was still in puberty over the phone. I mean, come on, his voice was cracking. Like he'd answer, and it's like, are you selling me like, candy bars for soccer, or are you actually, a real estate agent? But if he can do it, you can do it. And guys, here's the deal. He ended up listing 4 of those houses, right? Think about this, guys. It doesn't take much, but it does take consistency. All right. So he pounded those phones, he set the appointments, and here's my goal for you guys on FSBOs and expireds. Okay. And each one of those, either or, you can easily make your average sales price in the next 12 months, working just 22 and a half hours a week without buying any leads. Here's all you got to do. I want you to call as many FSBOs and expireds as it take to set. And by the way, stop worrying about conversations, stop worrying about calls made, about hours prospected. All you got to worry about is appointments set. Okay. So your goal with every conversation is set the appointment. And your KPI, the number one KPI that matters is you got to set, write this down, 2 appointments a day, 5 days a week with people you have not yet met who are interested in buying or selling a home. Okay. Now or in the future. That's it. 2 appointments a day, 5 days a week with people who are interested in buying or selling a home now or in the future. You do that every week, and guess what? You're going to have success. So here's his numbers: 97 listings his first 12 months selling real estate. Second year, 124 listings. Third year, 100. This was last year, was his third year. 164 listings last year. And guys, he didn't change up a lot of what he was doing. He's just been consistent at it. So a lot of the people, year 2 that he listed were people he met in year 1. In year 3, he listed people that he met in years 2 and year 1, right? He just nurtured that pipeline and it starts spitting out business. Guys, this business isn't complicated, but it's going to go to the people with the best habits. I don't care how smart, how charismatic, how good looking you are. None of that matters. What matters is consistency and the right habits. All right, now let's talk sphere of influence really quick. All right. With your sphere of influence, uh, everybody thinks they're going to get a bunch of business out of their sphere. Write this number down. In fact, type it into your chat. I want to know by definition. I'm going to define what sphere is. Listen to the definition first. Your sphere of influence is anybody in your database that if you taught them how and reminded them, you're pretty sure they would either do business with you or send you a referral at some point. Okay. So I want you to put into the chat, how many people do you know that meet that definition? If I taught them how and reminded them, they'd probably do business with me or send me a referral at some point. The national average, by the way, is about 250. And I see Angie, you put down 3 and George put down 6. Guys, who did you invite to your wedding? Like everybody in your wedding that you invited to your wedding's in your sphere, right? Who do you go to church with? Who do like think about your numbers. It's going to be bigger than 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever, right? Okay, you guys need to have a bigger sphere than that. That's it. Let's use 250 as our number. Whatever number you put down, I want you to multiply that by 10%. And my hunch is you're closing fewer than that number in referral-based transactions each year. That's a problem. You should be closing over 20% of that number every year, right? So if I've got a database of 250 people, most agents are going to close less than 25 transactions a year out of that database. If I'm at 250 people and I'm doing things right, I should be getting north of 50 transactions by referral per year out of that database, okay? So here's all you got to do, okay? Write this down. We're going to do 4 client events every year, no matter what. 4 client events per year, no matter what. Now, guys, this doesn't have to be complicated. We don't need to do Popeyes. We don't need to do cap items. We don't need to do all that stuff. Forget about all that stuff, okay? We don't need to do all that. If we do 4 client events per year, and it can be cheap, it can be a barbecue in your backyard. You can have your lender bring the hot dogs, okay? It does not have to be fancy, okay? What I want you to do is host this thing every single quarter. And then 3 weeks before the event. Now, look, we know you're going to email them, you're going to text message them, you're going to, Facebook message them, you're going to send them a physical mailer, you're going to post it all over social media. You're going to do everything you can to market it, but you're missing the big one. Watch this. Hey, Chris, what do you think the biggest thing we should be doing with this is 3 weeks before the event?
Calling.
That's exactly right. You call every single person in your sphere of influence. That's it, guys. That's the secret sauce. And guess what? Nobody does. Nobody calls their sphere. So what you need to do is you need to call every single person in your sphere of influence. And by the way, don't even tell them about the event. They already know you're having an event. Don't even tell them about it. Instead, what I want you to do is I want you to, in fact, write this down, BROT. That stands for Build Relationships on Trust. How am I going to do that? I'm going to call them up and I'm going to ask them open-ended questions using the Ford technique. Chris, you remember the Ford technique. This is something that's been around since before you and I were born. And that's saying something because we're old, right? I mean, that's a long time ago they came out with this. What's it stand for, guys? It's family, occupation, recreation, dreams. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them up and I'm going to ask them open-ended questions about their family, occupation, recreation, dreams. You remember Ty Leon Guerrero and Alex Lair, Chris?
Yep.
So we used to, went back in the REO days when we were doing a lot of travel for this, we used to do this with asset managers. We'd play a game. We'd see how few words can we say in an entire conversation with this person, right? So literally the whole time, all we would do is we would ask them open-ended questions and just get them talking about them. We'd just sit there and just smile and just, that's all we do. And they loved us. They thought we were the best conversationalists on the planet because, we just let them talk, right? And because nobody loves anything more than the sound of their own voice, right? And so I say this because what I want you to do is I want you to make these calls and I want you to ask them open-ended questions about their family, occupation, recreation, dreams, but don't even bring up real estate. Guys, I promise you this. They know you're having a client event. They already know that. You've sent it out in all those ways we talked about. So they already know. You don't need to cram it down their throat. And by the way, if you call them and you bring up real estate, now they think that's the reason for the call. If we're going to really build a relationship on trust, the call has to be about them and not about real estate. And by the way, the rule has to be you don't ever bring up real estate unless they do. And by the way, guess what? They always will. Okay. But here's the thing. The worst thing you could possibly do is you have this great conversation with them. You're building this relationship on trust. And all of a sudden you say something stupid like, oh, by the way, if you were buying or selling a home or had a friend or family member who was, do you have a realtor you'd refer them to? Guys, I don't care how great your cheesy Irish accent is. That is the worst, most self-serving script on planet Earth. Guys, think about this. What did you just tell them? You just said, look, I didn't call you for you. I called you for me because I want something from you. That should never be the case. Instead, what you need to do is you need to call them and you need to make it about them and show them that you care. There's a phrase, and it is true, right? That people don't care what you know until they know that you care, right? What's the best way to show them we care? Actually care. Surprise, surprise, right? And by the way, there's another phrase that says people need to know, like, and trust you before they do business with you. Type in yes or no. Do you think that's true? Yes or no? Think it's true? Do people need to know, like, and trust you to do business with you? Got a lot of yeses, a couple of nos. Okay, watch this. No, they don't. They don't have to like you. I'm telling you right now, they do not have to like you. But you know what they need to? They need to trust you. That's why we build a relationship on trust. You want to list more homes, for example? Guys, I've been over 10,000 listing appointments sitting across from mom and pop. You know what I learned in those appointments? They only care about three things. Write these down. These are the only three things that Mr. and Mrs. Seller care about. Who's going to give me the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of headache to me? Guess what's not on that list? You and me. They don't care about us. They don't have to like us. But the problem is most agents, they go to a listing appointment, they spend so much time trying to get people to like them that they don't get them to trust them. And in the process, they lose the trust. Even if they do like you, they might not trust you. And guess what? They'll work with somebody they don't like that they trust versus somebody that they like and don't trust. That's very important connotation. All right, that being said, so 3 weeks before the event, I'm making those calls. Now, if they bring up real estate, you can verbally vomit real estate all over them. That's fine, but don't say anything about real estate unless they bring it up. Then, moving on, we're going to go to the week after the event. The week after the event, I'm going to call all of the people that came to the event, and I'm going to say, hey, it was great to see you at the event. I'm sorry we didn't get to spend more time together. Let's make sure we get to spend more time at the next one together. Won't that be great? Fantastic. And then the people that didn't show up, a big mistake I see a lot of agents make is they try and induce FOMO. They try and make them feel guilty or like they missed out on something by not going. Don't do that. Again, don't even bring up the event. The only thing you need to convey on that phone call, write this down. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. I just wanted you to know I was thinking about you. That's it. Guys, I promise you, when you do that, you will begin building relationships on trust with these people. And when you do, you will be the only agent they ever use, and you will be the only agent they ever refer because you're who they trust. You want to become a trusted advisor, not just some real estate agent. All right, now I'm going to give you three scripts. Okay. And then I want to go. I know Chris, you've got some Q&A you want to do, so I want to hustle through this so we can go to the Q&A. But I want to give you three scripts I want you guys to memorize. Okay, very simple scripts. First of all, when you're calling people to follow up with them, and remember, there's only three things that are going to move the needle in your business. Okay, those three things are very simple: lead generation, lead follow-up, lead conversion. Lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion. That's it. Everything else in this business is noise. Everything else you can hire somebody for, you can hire one person in the States, or as your team grows, you'll hire a bunch of people in the Philippines or wherever, save a ton of money. Like, guys, you don't need to do anything other than lead generation, lead follow-up, and lead conversion yourself. Now, that said, the scripts are the lead follow-up script. Okay. This is the lead follow-up script I want you to use. It's very simple. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't dropping the ball on my end. I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on my end. I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball on my end. Okay, that's it. Super simple. And Michael, you just nailed it. People buy people before they buy products and services. You're absolutely correct on that. That's right. That's why they got to trust you. All right, so I just want to make sure I'm not dropping the ball in my end. Now, when you say that to people, here's their response. Oh, it's not you, it's me. Right. And so it's kind of like that girl in high school, right, guys? By the way, when the girl says it's not you, it's me, bro, it's you. Like, let's be real. All right. Now, that being said, I want you to think about this. When you say that to somebody, they feel bad, right? And so you've just invoked the law of reciprocity because they feel guilty they haven't gotten back to you. So guess what they're more likely to do in the future? They're more likely to answer your calls. They're more likely to show up for your appointment. They're more likely to call you back next time. And so this is how we want to be positioned, because now we're being positioned as a servant who cares instead of as just some salesperson, right? All right, next script. When you're on a buyer appointment, all right, when you're showing somebody a house, guys, this is I'm telling you right now, this is an unfair. I feel guilty even telling you about this because it's so unfair to all the other agents out there. All right. So just use this carefully, because you could get too many, I don't want you capturing all the market. Leave some for the other agents. All right. But here's the script. Every single showing, I want you to ask them at the end of the showing, at what price would this be a great deal for you? At what price would this be a great deal for you? And if you're showing a $400,000 house and they say $200,000, what do? I hear people all the time say, "Oh, you start showing them $200,000 houses, or you laugh in their face or whatever." No, that's no, you don't do that. What you do is you write it up for $200,000. I don't care what crazy price they come up with. The first thing you have to do is you absolutely have to tell them that you are on their side. You have to convince them that you are on their side. And you do that by helping them with where they are, right? You got to meet your clients where they're at. Here's the thing. They don't have your level of experience. They haven't been down the roads that you've been down, right? They don't know what you know. And so guess what? We're going to write it up for whatever price they want. And are they going to get that property? Probably not. Are we going to educate them along the way softly? Yes, absolutely. But we're not going to cram down their throat that they've got to come up with a much higher offer. They need to go through that process. All right, next. And by the way, Alyssa, yes, no, I do not work for Sharif. Actually, I'm his coach. And so I probably should change my name to Michael Hellickson Club Wealth. I probably should have done that ahead of time. But Sharif is one of our coaching clients, and I just happen to be in his office right now. He's a wonderful guy. In fact, I just did an event with him today. All right, that being said, let's go to the final script that I want you to memorize. So on the listing appointments, guys, I'm not kidding you. Listings are so easy when you just learn a couple of things. It's really easy to take listings, but you gotta get really good at the close. There's several pieces that I don't have time to go deep on right now, but the one thing I will tell you is when you've gone through your presentation and now you're at a point where you're ready to ask for their business, I want you to say the following. Everybody look at my eyes, okay? I need everybody to look right here in my eyes for this, okay? I'm waiting until everybody's looking up here. I'm just kidding. I can't see you guys, but you can see me. So look at my eyes. Okay. So I'm going to look at Mrs. Seller. And by the way, who's in charge? Is it Mr. or Mrs. Seller? It's always Mrs. Seller. Okay. Always. Okay. Unless I'm in an abusive household, and there's three telltale signs of an abusive household, which is about 1% of the time, by the way. There'll be holes in doors and walls. He won't let her get a word in edgewise, and she'll defer all questions to him. If one or more of those conditions applies, probably a good chance I'm in an abusive household. I got to direct my conversation to him and not her. But that's only about 1%. The other 99% of the time, it's all her all the time. So when I've gone through my presentation, I look her square in the eye. Her. Look at my eyes again. Here we go, guys. Mrs. Seller, are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Right? And what am I doing? I'm shaking my head back and forth. Now, Chris knows what this is. This is what's called a neuro-linguistic programming technique. Okay. If I want to get somebody to say no, I'll shake my head back and forth. If I want them to say yes, I'll nod my head up and down. And watch this. Look at what Chris is doing right now. And I'll bet a bunch of you are too. Subconsciously, you can't help it. This is physiologically compelling. All right. This is the easiest to learn, easiest to implement, and arguably the most effective NLP technique there is. Right? It's very simple. And by the way, practice it on your kids. By the time they were 5, this is what I got from my kids. You don't want me to go to bed now, do you, Daddy? Or you want me to have that ice cream, huh, Daddy? Right? Okay, so I'm just telling you guys, this is super powerful. So I'll repeat that. I've got questions in the chat. You guys are asking me to repeat this, so here it is. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Okay, you're shaking your head back and forth. Now, here's what's going to happen, guys. Occasionally, you're going to get a commission objection. I'm going to give you 3 quick ways. Do I have time for this, Chris? Can I do this?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to give you guys 3 quick objection handlers for commission. Okay. The first time somebody says, Michael, will you cut your commission? I'm going to say, no. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Guys, the first thing you have to understand about objections is most of them aren't objections. They're usually just a question, right? And so it's fun, it's fair to blow right past them, right? You don't have to address every single question with a direct, counter or whatever, right? Like, don't freak out and don't get all worked up about it. Now, I'll literally say, no, are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? No, fantastic. Here's the property disclosure form. I go right into my disclosure form. If they ask me again, it will usually come in the form of, hey, but this other agent said they would do it for less. And then I would look at them and I'd say, Susie, let me ask you a question. Like, if an agent's not willing to, or not strong enough to negotiate for their own commission, what makes you think they're going to be strong enough to negotiate for the price of your home? Shaking my head back and forth the entire time. And she'll say, yeah, I guess you're right. Fantastic. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? No? Great. Here's the property disclosure form. Now, if they ask me a third time, here's how I handle it the third time. The third time, let's say she says, no, really, we'd really like you to cut your commission. I'll say, well, Susie, as I showed you, my listings sell on average for 5.25% more than the average real estate agent's listings in the marketplace. So even if I charge you 2% more than every other agent out there, that means you're netting 3% more with me, 3.25% more with me than you would with any other agent out there. So really, the only question I have left for you is, what's more important to you? How much I make or how much you make? All right, fantastic. Are there any other questions before we get started on the paperwork? Great, here's the property disclosure form, and away we go. So with that said, Chris, I think I'm out of time. So I think we need to go to questions now. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I think I know we could keep going for a long time. But let's open up to questions. Like Michael has the ability and the skills to take this in any direction you want and answer any questions. And here's what I would do. I would think about what are your challenges right now? What are the conversations you struggle with? What are the things that you wish you could do better at? You
While
can
they're
put in
doing
the
that,
chat
Chris, should
while
I
we're
give them some lead sources they can capitalize on? Should I give them a lead sources list or?
yeah, let's do a lead source list, and then while people are thinking of questions, I'll ask you a few too.
Okay, well, you guys go ahead and start with your questions. I'm going to type this into the chat for everybody. I'm just going to give you a phone number you can opt in. It's 727 287 5993. If you guys want a list of 31 of my favorite lead sources, then just go ahead and send the words Club Wealth to that number right there, and I will send you a list of 31 of my favorite lead sources. Okay,
All right. So
so
one of the questions in chat, Michael, was about buyer representation. Like, what's your script for the agents that are still struggling with having a conversation about the process and compensation?
So start with this. First of all, don't be worried about it. Like, if you're concerned, they're going to be concerned. If you're not concerned, they're not going to be concerned. I know young men, and I'm telling you, and I'm saying young men, young people. There's a couple of girls on that team as well. But I know young people that are literally every single appointment they go on, they're literally, oh, hang on, what's that 214 number? That's I'm not sure what that is. That's the wrong number there, Quentin. But anyway, I know young people that are getting the buyer agency agreement signed every time they go on appointment. I would suggest this: don't ever talk about it over the phone. Okay, you go out there. You talk. This is something you talk about in person, and so you meet them at the house. And before you can open the door, guess what you have to do? You got to get a buyer agency agreement signed, right? Now, you don't have to do a carte blanche, blanket buyer agency agreement. It can be just for that one house. That's okay, right? But it is a federal law that you've got to get this thing signed. And so don't talk about it in terms of, hey, I'm trying to get you obligated to working with me long term. Just say, hey, look, by the way, federal law requires me to have you sign this agency agreement. All this basically says is if you buy this particular house, then you're going to buy it from me, and you're authorizing me to negotiate with the seller to get paid at least this much. And that's it. That's all you got to do. And you don't need to overcomplicate it. Like, don't take it any further than that. If they give you pushback at all, first of all, if they refuse to sign it, you don't let them in the house. That's it. You can't, right? You legally you got to get this thing signed. But the reality is that when you're low key about it, you will get very, very little pushback. And most people will just sign it and then you go show them the house. And here's the key. Even if it's just a one-time agency agreement, that's okay because you got them to put pen to paper. That is a step in the right direction. Now, after we've shown them the house and built a relationship on trust, then we can have the deeper conversation about what does it look like to have me representing you on anything you buy and how can I really bring value to that? I recommend a menu-driven system for that. Okay, so I'm going to give them a basic, standard, and premium option. I'll charge different commissions for each, and I'll provide different services for each. Now, you guys can't talk commissions amongst yourselves, and I'm certainly not going to tell you what I think you should charge at each one of those price points. But what I will tell you is on you're going to have, like, let's say, for example, basic, right? So for on basic, I might just be willing to open up a house for them, and I'm willing to give them 48-hour response time. Maybe on standard, I'm giving them same day response time, and I'm going to show them everything on the market. I'm going to send them listings. I'm going to do this other stuff. And then on premium, maybe I'm giving them 1 hour response time, and I'm going out and I'm door knocking for them in the neighborhoods they want to be in. I'm cold calling the neighborhoods they want to be in. I'm really going the extra mile for them. And again, I charge more as I go from basic to standard to premium. So go ahead, Chris.
Michael, you talked a lot about how to turn open houses into a something that's super productive. I
Yeah.
think there was at least one question about like what are the dialogues you have? So someone coming in, you're trying to capture their information or trying to have an impact, or how do you set it up for follow-up? And then let's talk about follow-up too. So open house dialogues.
Capturing information is really easy. I just make it very clear to them, hey, for the seller's safety and mine, we require that everybody sign in, and I need to see your photo ID. And if somebody's not willing to look, guys, I'm just gonna be real with you. It's dangerous out there. People do crazy stuff. There's some crazies out there. People get hurt. People get killed. I'm not trying to scare you off of open houses by any means, but be safe, right? Number one, I wouldn't recommend doing open houses by yourself. Have your lender there with you, or, have somebody else with you there. Learn some self-defense, practice good safety. And by the way, we're not going to go into open house safety. There's tons of great videos. If you just Google open house safety, there's great videos out there on how to stay safe at open houses. But I would require them to sign in and show me their ID, or I just don't feel safe letting them in. Simple as that. And when you're getting 45, 50 people out there, nobody's going to object to this. Also, I like you can use there's lots of ways to do this. You can use an electronic, like a tablet based, that syncs to your CRM, or you can use Open Home Pro. Every major CRM out there has an open house app for your tablet. And those work great. But I'll be honest with you, so do written ones. And the thing I like about the written ones is that you can have some names pre-filled in so people don't feel like they're the first one signing in. It makes it a little easier to get them to do that and to pull that trigger. Then ask them, would you like me to show you around or do you just want to look around? Right? And if they say, I just want to look around, leave them alone. Like, don't follow them through the house. Okay. Now, obviously, you need to pre-screen, you make sure your sellers aren't leaving valuables laying around and make sure, like you need to practice good prudence at these open houses as well. But at the end of the day, to get them to want to follow up with me, I'm going to follow up later that night. I'm going to follow up the next day. Very, very important. But you want to make sure that you're giving them access to something they can't get anywhere else. And so I would simply say to somebody like Chris, let's say he's coming through my open house, I'd say, hey, Chris, would it be okay with you, or would you like to get a copy of my off-market properties list? So all the stuff that I've got in the area that's not actually on the MLS that you can only get if I actually email to you. Would you be opposed to me sending you that? No? Fantastic. Okay, what's the best email address? And I'll send that over to him, right? And then I follow up with him by phone. So again, keep it low key. The problem is, if you've ever been on a blind date, I want you guys to think about blind dates, right? When you go on a blind date, do you knock on the girl's door? She opens the door and you just dive right in for a kiss? Like, no, that'd be weird, right? Like, you gotta buy her flowers, take her to dinner, bring her some value first, right? But you guys, with some of the, and not you guys, but other agents out there, what they're doing is they're going on, they're doing these open houses and they're trying to make out with people on the front porch, right? It's like, no, like you got to bring them value first. You got to slow roll into this. Don't ask them to marry you just yet, right? All right, good stuff. Next question.
So there's a question about calling expireds. If you're getting a voice message, you leave a message, and if so, what?
So first of all, as much as I feel like I know about calling expireds, I will tell you that and as many as expireds as I've called, I don't think I've called a fraction as many as Chris has. So I think you're better to answer that question than I am. But I'll give you my answer, and then you can tell me what you think.
Yeah.
But first of all, I don't leave a message on the first call. If I call them and they don't answer, I hang up and I do what's called a double dial. And here's the crazy statistic. So what it means is I hang up and I call them right back. 35% of the time, they're going to pick up the phone on the second call. 35%. That's insane. Guys, you think about how much time that saves you over the next 6, 8, 12 months on follow-up. It's insanity. So I don't leave a message the first time. Chris, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I do the same tactic what we call a double tap or a double
Yep.
dial.
Double
Um,
tap. That sounds like you're a hitman.
it's, it's from that movie. You know what's going through my mind is gotta get out. Mike used to always say this. People would ask if I'm door knocking and they don't answer, what do you say? I'm like, wait, what? So it's like, okay, if I'm calling someone they don't answer, what do I say? On the first couple calls, I'm going to keep calling, number one. So it's not going to be just the two calls and then I stop. So I may or may not leave a message. It's going to be a function of really how much time I have and how many expires there are. If I'm going to leave a message, whether it's on that initial attempt or later that night or the next day, I'm going to say, hey, this is Chris Heller. I know you get a bunch of calls about your property. All agents are trying to convince you to list with them. I'm simply calling to see that if you still have an interest in selling it. If you do, then we should talk. Right?
So I agree with that. And guys, let me give you this. I'm going to give you the follow-up schedule real quick. First of all, there's two keys to follow up. Speed to lead is number one, and tenacity of follow-up is number two, right? So I got to get to my leads. I got to be on the phone with them in 30 seconds. Lead comes in, I call it immediately. Next, tenacity of follow-up. There's 7 ways that we follow up with leads, and I'm just going to rattle these off real quick. You guys can watch this over again if you don't get them quick enough written down. I'm sure that there'll be a recap, but at the end of the day, it's phone, text, email, video text, video email. I'll give it to you again. Phone, text, email, video text, video email. Number 6 is I'm going to use AI, right? So I'm going to use either like a Ylopo or a Black Hat. Ylopo's a little on the spendy side. Black Hat's a lot less expensive. They're both good products. Vastly different cost-wise, but I'm going to use AI. So I want to make sure, and some of your CRMs do this. Lofty has this. Lots of CRMs have this. And at the end of the day, I want to make sure that my AI that I've got, first of all, really good AI, so that when it engages with people, it doesn't sound stupid and you can't tell it's AI, right? It's got to sound like a real person. And then number 7 is I'm going to Facebook stalk them. And what is Facebook stalking? Facebook stalking means if I'm having a hard time getting a hold of somebody, I'm going to DM them on Facebook. They're not going to see that. And so I'm going to go into their feed. I'm going to find a place where they're communicating with somebody else. I'm going to hit reply to one of their comments. That's going to tag them in my comment. And I'm going to say, hey, Susie, it's Michael. I'm trying to get a hold of you. Here's my phone number. By the way, I sent you a direct message. It probably went into your filtered messages. You might want to check there. Now, she's never going to call me from that, promise you. But what she will do is she'll go into her direct messages and she'll pull up my message. And guess what's going to happen next? Facebook now thinks we know each other. So it's not going to feed her a bunch of my content, but it'll feed her just a little bit of my content, which helps me get closer to that 7 to 10 touches that I need before she'll even remember my name, right? In addition to that, I'm going to target and retarget everyone on Facebook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my leads and I'm going to create a targeted custom audience on Facebook and on my social media platforms, right? And I'm going to run ads and it's going to be value add. At this point, I'm only running value add, value add, value add. And so I'm just going to value add them to death. And then at some point, if they, when they get far enough down my funnel, then I'll start doing direct, direct response, right? But I'm not going to do that until I've done enough value add. And then I'm also going to retarget, right? So it's target and then retarget. And the retargeting is surprisingly cheap. It'd be surprising to you how effectively you can hit somebody. And I want them to see my stuff 33 times a week. And you can accomplish that for like penny. I mean, you could for an average agent, you could get everybody in your database seeing your stuff 33 times a week for under $50 a month. It's not very expensive. So it's literally just run retargeted ads. Okay. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Chris. Chris, you're muted. We can't hear you, Chris. There you
Sorry.
go.
I was about to sneeze, so I muted and then I didn't mean to sneeze. The couple things. One is, and by the way, I love the follow-up plan and hopefully
Oh,
everyone's listening to this.
can
Go
I
ahead.
can I pause you right there? I totally
Yeah.
forgot. I didn't tell them the tenacity with which they got to follow up. Let me give you the schedule for follow up, and then we'll go to the next thing, Chris. The schedule for follow up, guys, we call it the Club Wealth Rule of Three. You'll see, like Ben Kinney, friend of yours, Chris. Ben knows, and I say friend of yours, friend of mine too. I just like to tease him, so I think he's irritated with me. But Ben calls it his 10 days of pain, similar, but different. By the way, he totally copied that from me, and you can tell him I said that. So here it is. The rule of three is I'm going to contact them in one of those 7 ways: 3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks, 3 times a month for the next 3 months, 3 times a year for the next 3 years. I'll give it to you one more time: 3 times a day for the first 3 days, 3 times a week for the next 3 weeks, 3 times a month for the next 3 months, 3 times a year for the next 3 years. And I know that sounds crazy, but I will promise you this: you will close business just by following that schedule. You don't even have to be great.
You don't. And if you follow that, and it's not the magic of that, it's the magic of being persistent and consistent. And if you're persistent and consistent, you will win more times than not. Yes, adding skills and energy and enthusiasm is going to help, but just being persistent and consistent that way.
And
Um,
Chris, to your point, when it comes to persistence, write this down, guys. Be pleasantly persistent and aggressive with the process, but not with people. Okay. Pleasantly persistent and be aggressive with the process, but not with people. That's it. That's it.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I love it, love it. Um, it's been asked a few times, where do you get numbers for FSBOs expires? There's several companies that can help you with that. Reddit, someone just put in RedX, Mojo, a lot of different data companies and sources for that. The Michael, there's 130 or 40 people here live. There's going to be several thousand that'll watch the video of this. There's a small percentage of them that will take these ideas and put them into action in the next few days or the next few weeks. What's the difference between those people and everyone else?
That it's very simple. It's discipline. And I'll tell you what, the difference between successful people in this business and those that wash out comes down to discipline. It doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter. And don't get me wrong, there's some really hot people on this planet that are really charismatic, that are going to do really good pointing at stuff on TikTok. I'm not one of those. Okay. Like that, I didn't have that advantage. Okay. So for us normal mortals, right? Guess what we have to do? We have to be disciplined. And I will tell you that I coach a lot of people that do north of 70 and even north of 100 and more listings per year. Okay. And just one individual. I'm not talking teams. And I will tell you that the consistent commonality that they all have is that they are all disciplined and have great daily habits. And here's what their schedule generally looks like. It's not always exactly this, but it's usually very close to this. They are normally in the office, and I'm not getting, first of all, they work in a physical office, not from home. Okay. So they're in their office 5 days a week, generally prior to 7:30. From 7:30 to 8 a.m., they do a daily huddle with their team. If they don't have a team, they have an accountability partner that they meet with between 7:30 and 8 on a daily basis. From 8 o'clock until noon, guess what they do? They hit the phones and they do lead generation and lead follow-up, and that's it. And all they're focused on is, how do I get these leads to convert to an appointment? That's it. And if the time's not right, they don't try and force people into an appointment, right? So if somebody's not there yet, because you got to remember, there's 3 stages in the process, right? There's aspirational, right? Which is like, gosh, honey, wouldn't it be great if, and then there's informational, and informational is when they start actively looking online and that sort of thing. And then there's transactional. That's when they're actually out looking at houses, going to open houses, writing offers on properties, right? Well, if I treat somebody who's aspirational like they're transactional, I'm gonna chase them off, right? Likewise, if I treat somebody who's transactional like they're aspirational, they're gonna go find somebody who's gonna help them faster. So I have to identify where they're at in that process and assuming they are ready for an appointment. Like if I'm sensing that they're somewhere between informational and transactional, I'm going for the appointment. If they're just aspirational, then I'm just going to make sure I'm building that relationship on trust, and I'm going to nurture them over a long period of time. And when they're ready, I'll be their go-to.
All right. Um, this is awesome. I could keep asking you questions for the next hour and not run out of stuff, but we're at time. So a couple things. Everyone, we're gonna let you know how to get a hold of Michael. You're gonna get an email with the recording of this, Michael's contact information. So if you have questions for him, want to talk to him, we're gonna be Michael's. And thank you for inviting me. But you invited me to an event you have coming up in just whenever it is in Nashville. Um,
It's the 28th and 29th of April in Nashville, and you are speaking at that. I'm excited,
I am speaking. I'm excited too. I'm looking
dude,
forward
and
to
I
it. So.
love your topic, and I think it's so necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be the what we've learned from 218,000 recordings of many of you. And so anyways, if you want to come to a live event, that's one I can highly recommend. Michael, thank you for taking the time for doing this. Everyone that's joined us, thank you for being here. We hope you got lots of value. If you were here, you got value. So no question in my mind about that. We will see you next month when we do this again. Everyone have a great and productive rest of the week. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Chris. See you guys.